You wake up before the pain begins. The room is already watching you. Wooden walls, a single window above, men in dark coats whispering as they prepare their tools. You smell it first. Not blood, not death, medicine, alcohol, metal, sweat, and something older, something that never truly leaves this room. There is no mask for your face, no gas, no mercy. In 1874, surgery was not about comfort. It was about speed and survival. You are fully awake, and they are about to begin. Would you survive a 19th century operating room? This is not a horror story. This is history. The smell before the cut. You do not see the knife first. You smell the room. The air is thick, heavy with alcohol, damp wood, and something sour that clings to the back of your throat. The windows are closed. They must be. The winter air outside London is cruel, and the men who work here prefer their hands steady. You are lying on a wooden table, not a hospital bed, not a place of comfort, a table built for work. Your back feels every ridge in the timber. There is no cushion, only a thin cloth beneath you, already stained by others who came before. You try to swallow. Your mouth is dry. Above you, a skylight lets in pale morning light, cutting across dust that floats in slow, lazy spirals. It would almost be beautiful, if not for the men gathered in shadow. They do not look at you the way a modern physician would. They look at you like a task. One of them adjusts his sleeves. Another wipes his hands with a cloth that has seen too many mornings like this. There is no sink nearby, no gleaming, sterile steel, only basins of cloudy water, only reused instruments laid carefully on a wooden tray. You turn your head slightly. That was a mistake. You see them now. The tools, a saw, long knives, hooks, forceps with teeth. They are not hidden. They are not polished to reassure you. They are practical, worn, honest in their brutality. Your chest tightens. Someone says your name. You did not hear them enter, but there is another man at your side now. Older, calm. His face lined not by cruelty, but by repetition. He has done this before. He will do it again. He leans close enough that you feel his breath. You must remain still. Remain still, as if that were possible. Your hands are already bound at the wrists, thick leather straps. You notice them only now. Your ankles, too. This is not a suggestion. This is preparation. The assistant moves toward your shoulders, another toward your legs. You understand something then. This is not to protect you. It is to protect them. Because when the first cut comes, your body will fight. Your heart is beating too fast. You can feel it in your throat, in your ears, in your fingertips. You ask, quietly, about the gas, about the ether. You heard about it. You read something. A demonstration, a miracle vapor that sends men into sleep. The older surgeon does not smile. Not today. Not today. The year is 1874. Ether exists. Chloroform exists. But not everywhere. Not reliably. Not for everyone. And sometimes, not at all. You realize something colder than fear. They are not trying to save you from pain. They are trying to save time. Speed is survival in this room. The faster they cut, the less you bleed. The less you bleed, the better your chances. Pain is secondary. A cloth is placed between your teeth. You taste dust. Someone grips your shoulder. Another steadies your leg. The surgeon lifts one of the knives. It is not raised dramatically. It is not theatrical. It is simply ready. Your body already knows what is coming. Your mind does not. And then he leans closer. Hold him. The light shifts across your face. The room grows impossibly small. And for a moment, before the blade ever touches skin, you understand why so many never returned from this table. Because survival here does not begin with the cut. It begins with endurance. And you are still awake. Speed is mercy. The first cut does not feel sharp. It feels hot. Your body does not register it as a blade. It registers intrusion, a violent, impossible pressure, then a tearing heat that spreads outward like fire beneath your skin. Your jaw clamps down on the cloth before you understand you are screaming. You hear it, but it sounds distant, like someone else's voice echoing from far away. Hands press harder on your shoulders. Someone's knee digs into the side of your thigh to keep you from twisting. Hold him. The surgeon does not hesitate. There is no pause to assess your comfort. There is no waiting for numbness. There is only rhythm. Cut, wipe, pull, clamp. Your vision fractures. The ceiling above you blurs, then sharpens, then blurs again. The skylight flickers as if the world itself cannot decide whether to stay or disappear. You try to breathe through your nose. You regret it immediately. The smell is worse now. Metal, warmth, alcohol that cannot overpower what has been opened. Your body tries to curl in on itself, but it cannot. You feel pressure inside your chest that has nothing to do with the surgery. Your heart is racing so violently it feels detached from your ribs, slamming against bone in panic. You try to lift your head. The assistant pushes it back down. Almost there, someone mutters. Almost where? Time does not exist here the way it does outside. A second feels like an hour. An hour feels like collapse. You feel pulling now, not slicing, but force. Something inside you being separated from something else. A wet sound, a tearing resistance. Your body jerks despite the restraints. Your wrists burn against leather. The surgeon speaks calmly, almost conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Steady. Steady. You realize something terrible. They are not reacting to your pain. They are managing it. Because your pain is expected. Your pain is routine. The faster they move, the better your chances. Infection waits in the air, on the table, on the cloth, on their sleeves. The operating room is not sterile. It is efficient. Your scream cracks into silence as your lungs empty. You cannot draw enough air back in. Black edges creep into your vision. Your body trembles uncontrollably now, not by choice, but by instinct. The kind of shaking that belongs to animals caught in traps. You hear the surgeon's voice again. Nearly done. Nearly done. Your mind tries to anchor to that phrase. Nearly done. But the body does not understand language. It understands only violation. There is a sudden, brutal pressure, deeper than before, and the room erupts into movement. Clamp! A metallic snap. Ligature! Another pull. The surgeon's hands move faster now. Speed is mercy. Speed is survival. Speed is the only kindness this room knows how to give. Your vision finally tunnels. The skylight narrows to a thin rectangle of pale morning. Dust floats through it. slow and indifferent. You wonder, dimly, how many others have stared at that same rectangle and wished it would go dark. You feel lightness in your limbs, not relief, something else. Your heart stutters. The assistants shift their weight. The surgeon leans closer. Stay with us. As if staying were a decision. As if the body negotiates. The world tilts sideways. Sound stretches thin. The smell fades. And just before everything slips, you realize something you were never told. Pain was not the greatest danger in this room. It was blood. And you are losing too much. The smell that never leaves. The world doesn't disappear all at once. It leaves slowly. You don't fall into the darkness, you slide into it. First, the sounds disappear. Voices become distant, as if they've been covered with a thick blanket. Metal stops ringing. Someone says something sharply, but all you hear is a soft, drawn-out echo. Then the cold comes. You lie on a wooden table, but suddenly you feel the warmth drain from your fingertips. Your hands become strange. Your legs become heavy. The blood doesn't just drain, it takes the clarity with it. You don't know how much time has passed, maybe minutes, maybe seconds. Your body trembles, but not from pain anymore. It trembles because it's empty inside. Someone slaps you on the cheek, not rudely, functionally. Stay with us. It's not a request, it's an order. You try to answer, but your lips move slowly. Your tongue is heavy. The air smells the same: metal, alcohol, warm fabric. And now, something else. A damp, sweet smell that doesn't go away. Victorian operating rooms weren't sterile in the modern sense. Instruments were wiped, hands were washed, but no one was yet afraid of the microscopic world. Surgeons worked in coats they had worn for years, the same coats, the same sleeves. The blood dried in layers. It darkened. It stayed. And this smell, it stuck. Into the floor, into the tissue, into the skin. They say some surgeons could tell the type of surgery by the smell in the room. You inhale, and you feel that this smell will now stay with you. Your vision jerks back. The ceiling, the silhouette above you, the light through the glass. You're still alive. You're not sure if this is good. The pain is different now. It doesn't cut. It throbs, deep, dull, as if there's a separate heart beating inside you, not your own. You struggle to lift your head. The world spins. You see the floor, dark spots on it, old, new, different shades of the same color. Surgery in the 19th century was a race against time. A surgeon who amputated a leg in 90 seconds was considered a master. Not because of elegance, because of survival. The longer the operation, the greater the risk. Not just blood loss, but shock. The body has a limit. When the pain exceeds that limit, the body simply shuts down. Some patients didn't die from the wound. They died because their nervous system couldn't take it anymore. You try to remember why you're here. What brought you to this table? An illness? An infection? An injury? Maybe it started with a small cut, a small inflammation, a small pain. And now you're lying here, exposed, under a light that doesn't warm you. Someone is removing the straps. You can't move right away. Your muscles don't obey. You feel a thick cloth being pushed under you. You're being moved. Your consciousness is still floating. And then you notice something strange. The surgeon isn't looking at you. He's already looking at the instruments, at the next table, at the next person. you're already a thing of the past. In the 19th century, operating rooms were like theaters. Students stood in a semicircle, watching, taking notes. For them, it was learning. For you, it was your only chance. You feel a blanket being pulled over you. Rough, thin, not enough. The pain slowly comes back into focus. Not like an explosion, but like a background, like the hum of a city that never stops. You swallow. Your mouth is dry. You want water, but your voice doesn't come out. Your pulse slows down. That's good. Or bad. You don't know. You look at the ceiling again. The light is different. Maybe a cloud has blocked the sun. Maybe it's just your eyes. And suddenly a thought comes to you. Pain is not the worst thing. Fear is not the worst thing. The worst thing is that now another competition begins. Not with speed, but over time. Infection doesn't come right away. It waits. In the wound, on the skin, in the air. You survived the operation, but that doesn't mean you survived. The fever room. You wake to silence. Not the silence of peace, the silence of waiting. The operation is over. The cutting has stopped. The hands have left your body. But the room has not released you. You are no longer in the theater. They have moved you. The air is different here, thicker, still. It does not carry the sharp smell of spirits or metal. Instead, it carries something softer, sweat, damp linen, old breath. You lie on a narrow cot. The mattress is thin, the blanket coarse. Your body feels impossibly heavy, as if gravity has deepened during your sleep. Your wound throbs, not sharply, deeply, a pulse beneath the pulse. You try to shift your weight. Pain answers immediately. It does not scream, it presses. A reminder that something inside you has been opened, altered, disturbed. You lift your hand. It trembles. Not violently, just enough to tell you that your strength is not where you left it. Across the room, someone coughs. A wet cough. Another groans. This is not recovery. This is a holding space, a fever ward. In the 19th century, survival did not end with surgery. In many cases, surgery was only the beginning of a more uncertain fight. They did not yet understand bacteria. They did not speak of sterilization the way we do now. Infection was described as bad air, miasma, putrefaction. They could see the swelling. They could smell the rot, but they could not see what caused it. You close your eyes. Heat blooms beneath your skin. It begins in your chest, spreads to your neck, then to your face. You open your eyes again. The ceiling swims slightly. The room tilts. Not dramatically, but enough to feel wrong. Your mouth is dry. Your tongue feels too large. You swallow and feel the movement echo through your wound. It is not bleeding now. That battle, at least, was won. But something else has begun. A nurse moves quietly between beds. Her steps are soft. Her expression unreadable. She checks bandages, feels foreheads, wipes lips with damp cloths. She pauses at your side. Her hand touches your brow. You see it in her eyes, a flicker, recognition, the heat. Rest, she says quietly, as if rest were a choice. The fever rises in waves. It does not strike all at once. It creeps. Your skin feels tight. Your thoughts begin to drift at the edges. You hear whispers, not in the room, in your head. Fragments of the operating theater return. The blade, the pulling, the sound. You smell it again, metal and warmth. You try to sit up. Your vision flashes white. You fall back. Across from you, a man begins to mutter. He is older. His bandage is darker than yours. He grips the sides of his bed as if holding onto something invisible. His eyes are open, but unfocused. He is not here. He is somewhere else, somewhere inside the heat. Fever in the 1800s was both symptom and omen. A rising temperature meant the body was fighting, but too high, too long, it meant the body was losing. You feel your heartbeat in your throat now, in your ears, in the wound. Your bandage feels tight, too tight. You press your hand lightly against it. Warm, damp. You do not remove it. You are not sure you want to see. The nurse returns with water. She lifts your head carefully. You drink. The water tastes metallic, or perhaps that is only your mouth. When she lowers you back down, your vision lingers on her apron. There are faint stains, old ones, new ones, layered history. The room smells different now, sweeter, heavier, a smell that does not belong to healing. You recognize it instinctively. Decay. In Victorian hospitals, infection often spread from bed to bed. Instruments reused, hands insufficiently cleaned, air unmoving. Patients survived the blade only to succumb to what followed. You begin to shiver, violently now. Your teeth chatter. The heat and the cold coexist. Fire beneath ice. You pull the blanket tighter. It does nothing. The man across from you stops muttering. He goes very still. Too still. No one rushes to him immediately. This room has seen stillness before. Your thoughts slow. They stretch. Memories blur with hallucination. The ceiling above you shifts shape. The shadows deepen. You blink, and for a moment, you are back on the table, held down, cut open. You hear the surgeon's voice. Nearly done. But it was not nearly done. It was only the first act. Your wound pulses harder. A dull ache becomes sharper at its edges. You imagine what might be happening beneath the bandage. Swelling, fluid, heat trapped where it should not be. Your hand inches toward it again. This time, you press slightly harder. Pain flares, immediate, alive. You gasp. The nurse notices. She returns. She unties the bandage slowly. You hold your breath. The cloth peels back. The air touches the wound. And even from where you lie, you smell it. Faint, but there. Not the clean smell of blood. Something thicker. Something beginning. Her face tightens, just slightly. She says nothing. She replaces the bandage, tighter this time. Rest, she repeats. As if rest can fight what she cannot. The fever climbs higher. Your thoughts fracture. You drift in and out. Voices echo without context. The room grows darker, though no lamp has been extinguished. You realize something terrible. The operation was measured in minutes. This part will be measured in days. Days of heat. Days of uncertainty. Days of waiting to see whether the invisible world inside your wound decides to spare you. Pain was immediate. Fever is patient. And patience is far more dangerous. Delirium. The fever doesn't subside. It comes like a second pulse. Morning and night lose their meaning. The room exists in a constant semi-darkness. The curtains are drawn, the lamps are dimmed, shadows cling to the corners. You wake up not sure if you've been asleep. Your skin is damp. Your hair sticks to your forehead. Your bandage feels heavier today. You don't want to think about what that means. At the other end of the ward, the old man's bed is empty. No announcement, no explanation, just empty. The mattress has already been removed. Another body has taken its place. Victorian hospitals didn't stop for mourning. Beds were precious. Space was survival. You close your eyes again. The operating room returns immediately. The blade flashes. The clamp clicks. You smell it again, this time stronger. Not just metal, not just blood, something sour under it. When you open your eyes, the smell remains. It's real. It's coming from you. In the 19th century, surgeons often described infected wounds as pustulous. Pus was expected. Sometimes it was even considered a good sign. They called it praiseworthy pus. They thought it meant the body was cleansing itself. They didn't yet understand that the thick yellow fluid was a battlefield. Dead cells, bacteria, a war that is lost or won silently. Your wound throbs differently today, not deep and dull, sharper, more focused. It's like something inside is pushing outward. You try to get up a little. Your hands are shaking badly. Your breathing is getting shorter. The nurse reappears. Her movements are efficient. She checks your pulse. She counts quietly. Her fingers linger on your wrist a little too long. You stare intently at her face. She avoids your gaze. Then the fear changes form. Before, it was about the blade. Now it's about what they're not saying. By lunchtime, the temperature rises again. Your vision doubles. The walls breathe. The ceiling tilts. You hear a whisper that doesn't belong to anyone in the room. You hear your name. You hear your mother's voice. You hear the surgeon say, "Almost done." You're not sure if this is a memory or a fantasy. The room smells stronger now. Not only you, others too. The air grows sweet and rotten at the same time. A young boy, 2 beds down, begins to cry. Soft at first, then louder. His leg is bandaged from thigh to ankle. You see stains spreading slowly through the linen. His crying becomes confused. He calls for someone who is not there. By evening, he is silent. Too silent. The nurse covers his face. You stare at the ceiling. You do not blink. You are afraid that if you close your eyes, you will not reopen them. Your body shakes again. Not from cold, from something deeper. Your heart beats too fast, then too slow, then too fast again. Your hand drifts once more to your wound. This time, you cannot resist. You slide your fingers beneath the edge of the bandage. The skin feels swollen, hot, too hot. You press slightly. Pain explodes upward, white, blinding. But beneath the pain is something worse. Movement. A shifting sensation under the surface. As if the wound is no longer only a wound. As if it is becoming something else. Gangrene. In Victorian England, it was a word spoken quietly. Blackening flesh. Spreading decay. The smell was unmistakable. Sweet. Heavy. Final. You pull your hand away. Your fingers tremble. You look at them. There is dampness there. Clouded. Not bright red. Something thicker. You wipe it against the blanket quickly, as if hiding evidence. The surgeon visits at night. He does not look as composed as before. He removes the bandage fully this time. The air hits the wound again. You see his jaw tighten. Just that. No reassurance. No comfort. He presses near the edges. You scream. This scream is weaker than the first one, but it is sharper. He studies the tissue, the color, the swelling. He turns to the nurse. We may need to reopen. The words fall like stones. Reopen. You understand immediately. They cut you to save you. Now they may cut again, without anesthesia. Again. Your breathing becomes erratic. You shake your head, weakly. You try to speak. No. The word barely escapes. He does not argue. He simply watches you, measuring, assessing. In this era, reopening a wound could mean survival, or it could mean death on the table. Again. You close your eyes, and for the first time, you realize something darker than pain. You are not in control of whether they cut you again. Your body is evidence. Your wound is a decision, and your survival is a calculation. The fever climbs higher. Your thoughts fracture completely now. You see figures at the edge of the room. You smell soil, freshly turned earth. You hear shovels. You see the ceiling morph into sky. You are no longer in the ward. You are already below it. You wake with a violent gasp. The surgeon is gone. The nurse sits nearby, watching, waiting. Your pulse is racing, but you are still here, for now. Outside the window, dawn begins to form. Gray, cold, indifferent. The ward does not change. The smell remains. The heat remains. The decision hangs in the air like fog. You survived the blade. You survived the blood loss. But now you face something slower, something invisible, and far more patient. The second cut. You do not sleep. You drift, you surface, you sink again. Morning comes without warmth. The fever has not broken. It has settled deeper, like a tenant refusing eviction. Your wound feels larger today, not physically, but in presence. It dominates your awareness. Every movement echoes through it. Every breath touches it. The nurse changes your bandage again. This time she does not pretend. The smell reaches you before the cloth fully lifts. It is stronger now, sweet, sour, wrong. Your stomach turns. She says nothing, but her movements are quicker, more deliberate, as if minimizing exposure. When the surgeon arrives, he does not greet you. He studies you, your eyes, your skin, your breathing. He presses 2 fingers lightly against your neck, counting. He removes the bandage. Silence. Longer than before. You try to read his face. It is practiced, neutral, but not calm. He presses near the center of the wound. Pain detonates upward. Your body arches involuntarily. He nods once. Not satisfied. Confirmed. The infection is spreading. He does not whisper it. He states it. The nurse's eyes lower. You swallow. Your throat is dry. What does that mean? You manage. He looks at you directly now. It means we intervene, or we wait. There is no third option. Waiting means letting the infection decide. Intervening means cutting again. Victorian surgeons believed in decisive action. Hesitation allowed rot to travel. Once it reached the bloodstream, there was little hope. They had seen it too many times. Red streaks along the skin, swelling, heat, then delirium, then stillness. You know the answer before he says it. We reopen. Your body tightens instinctively. You shake your head, weak, desperate. No, please. He does not argue. He explains. If we drain it now, you have a chance. If we do not, he does not finish. He does not need to. You look around the ward. You think of the older man, the boy, the empty bed. You think of the theater, the straps, the skylight. You think of surviving that. Can you survive it again? There is no anesthesia prepared. Ether existed by the mid-19th century, but not everywhere, not reliably, not always available. And in many cases, surgeons still trusted speed more than sedation. Speed was cleaner, faster, more predictable. You nod. Barely. The decision is not brave. It is automatic. They move you before you can change your mind. The corridor feels colder than before. Your body is weaker. Every jolt of the stretcher sends shock waves through your abdomen. The theater looks the same, unchanged, indifferent. The skylight glows pale. Students gather again. You wonder if they recognize you. The man who survived once, now returning. They strap you down, not roughly, but firmly. Your wrists remember the pressure. Your shoulders remember the weight. The surgeon stands above you again. Different expression this time. Less urgency, more calculation. This will be brief, he says. You almost laugh. Brief is relative. The cloth is placed between your teeth again. The room smells like metal and yesterday. Your heart pounds. The first incision does not shock you the way it did before. You are expecting it, which almost makes it worse. Pain blooms immediately. White. Hot. Your scream tears through the theater again, but it is hoarser now, weaker. Your body struggles, but you do not have the strength you had before. They open the wound. You feel pressure. You feel pulling. You feel something being forced outward. Fluid, warm. Sudden relief mixes with agony. They drain it, clean it, scrape away what should not be there. The surgeon works with precision, quick, efficient. Students lean closer. This is education. This is survival. Your vision blurs again, but you do not pass out this time. You endure. Every second. Conscious. Present. The scraping sensation is worse than the cutting. It feels deliberate, intentional, like correction. You smell it stronger now. The rot. Exposed. Removed. They irrigate the wound with solution. Cold, sharp, burning. Then the pressure lessens. The surgeon steps back. Bandage. Your body collapses back against the table. Not unconscious, but emptied. They wrap you tightly, securely. You are not sure how long you were there. It felt longer than the first operation, perhaps because you knew. They carry you back to the ward. The corridor swims. Your ears ring. When they place you back on the cot, your body shakes uncontrollably. Not from cold, from shock. Victorian patients often died not from infection itself, but from shock after repeated surgical trauma. The body can only endure so much violence before it begins to shut down. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your hands tremble. The nurse sits beside you again. She presses a damp cloth to your forehead. You hear your own pulse echoing inside your skull. Too loud, too irregular. Time slows. Minutes stretch. The fever does not spike immediately. That frightens you more. It waits. You drift in and out of awareness. But something feels different. The pressure inside the wound is less. The throbbing, muted. You do not trust it. You have learned not to. Evening arrives. The ward is quieter than usual. Fewer coughs, fewer whispers. You stare at the ceiling again. The same cracks. The same stain near the corner. You inhale. The smell is still there, but weaker. Not gone, just diminished. The surgeon returns once more before night. He checks the bandage, feels your pulse, studies your eyes. "This may have been in time," he says. May. In Victorian medicine, certainty was rare. You close your eyes. For the first time since the first incision, your body feels less like a battlefield. Still fragile, still burning, but not collapsing. Outside, night settles. Inside, the ward breathes softly. You are not healed. You are not safe. But you are still alive. And in this room, that is never guaranteed. What remains? Morning arrives without drama. No sudden pain, no sharp spike of heat, no violent shaking. Just light. Gray and thin through the window. You wake slowly. For a moment, you do not know where you are. Then your body reminds you. The wound is still there, but it is different. The pain is no longer explosive. It is heavy, dense, like a stone resting inside you. You inhale carefully. The air does not burn the way it did yesterday. You wait. You expect the fever to rise again. It does not. Not yet. The nurse approaches quietly. She removes the bandage with steady hands. You watch her face. You have learned to read it. She studies the wound. This time, her jaw does not tighten. She nods, almost imperceptibly. "Good," she says softly. It is the first hopeful word spoken in days. Good. The swelling has reduced slightly. The color is less angry. The fluid is clearer. The infection has not disappeared, but it has stopped advancing. Your body has pushed back. You close your eyes in relief. Not joy, not celebration, just relief. Victorian recovery was slow. Pain lingered. Scars formed thick and rigid. Without antibiotics, healing depended almost entirely on the body's own strength, and strength was unpredictable. You try to sit up. This time you succeed, partially. Your arms still tremble, but they hold. Your world no longer spins violently. Across the ward, others are not as fortunate. A bed 2 spaces away is now empty again. The blanket folded, the mattress stripped. You do not ask. You understand. Survival is selective here. It chooses without explanation. Hours pass. You measure time by the shifting light on the wall, by the rhythm of footsteps, by the changing sounds of breathing in the room. The fever lingers faintly. a low hum beneath your skin, but it does not climb. You touch your own forehead. It is warm, not burning. Your body feels hollow, exhausted beyond description, as if every drop of energy was spent fighting something unseen, because it was. You close your eyes again, and this time you do not see the theater. You do not hear the blade. You do not smell the rot. You see something else. Stillness, but not the dangerous kind, the quiet kind. Recovery in the 19th century was not monitored by machines. No screens, no digital numbers, only observation. Color of skin, clarity of eyes, strength of pulse, and hope. The surgeon visits again in the afternoon. He examines the wound without commentary. He presses lightly. You tense, but the pain does not explode. It answers, then recedes. He nods once. "You are fortunate," he says. Fortunate. You think of the older man, the boy, the empty beds. You are not sure that word feels accurate, but you accept it. Days pass. Slowly. You begin to stand with assistance. Your legs feel unfamiliar, unreliable. Your abdomen pulls tightly where the incision was made. Scar tissue begins to form beneath the surface. Thick, rigid, permanent. The body remembers. It seals trauma not only with skin, but with hardness. You shuffle a few steps. The ward feels larger from this height. You see the other patients differently, not as distant figures, but as reflections. Some will leave. Some will not. The smell in the room has changed. Still heavy, but not centered on you. You realize something quietly. The greatest terror was not dying on the table. It was waiting. Waiting to see whether your body would betray you. Waiting to feel the fever climb. Waiting to see if they would cut again. Now the waiting is softer. You sit by the window one afternoon. Weak sunlight touches your face. You close your eyes and feel warmth that is not pain. You breathe deeply. For the first time, the air does not carry fear. But something has shifted inside you. You are not the person who entered the theater. You understand fragility now. You understand how thin the line is between flesh and silence. You understand how survival is not heroic. It is accidental, calculated, conditional. Victorian medicine advanced rapidly in the decades that followed. Antiseptic practices emerged. Hands were washed more carefully. Instruments sterilized. But for you, this was the era you lived in. This was the risk you carried. The scar will remain. A raised line. Pale at first, then darker. A reminder. You run your fingers across it gently. It feels foreign, yet it belongs to you. You leave the hospital weeks later, slower, lighter, changed. The streets of London feel louder now, brighter, almost overwhelming. You pass by a building with tall windows and a glass skylight. You do not look up. You do not need to. You know what waits inside. The blade, the theater, the speed, the mercy. You survived the operating room. You survived the fever. But survival is not the same as forgetting. Some nights you will still wake smelling metal. Some mornings you will feel phantom heat beneath your skin. And when someone speaks casually of surgery, you will know. It was never just the cut. It was the waiting afterward and the knowledge that at any moment they might decide to cut again. The city after the table. You leave the hospital on a gray morning. No ceremony. No applause for survival. Just a door opening into cold London air. The street feels louder than you remember. Carriages rattle over wet cobblestones. Vendors shout. Smoke rises in slow black ribbons from chimneys. Life continues, indifferent to what you endured. You pause for a moment on the steps. Your body feels unfamiliar, weaker, but also sharpened. Every sound seems louder now, every smell stronger. Coal smoke, horse sweat, damp wool. And beneath it all, something metallic. You know it is only memory, but it follows you. The wound pulls as you walk. Each step stretches scar tissue that has not yet learned to bend. Victorian surgical scars were rarely neat. Without modern sutures, without precise techniques, healing was functional, not elegant. Your body bears evidence of survival. You move slowly down the street. People glance at you briefly, then look away. In 19th century London, illness was common. Injury was visible. Scars were not unusual. But you feel marked, as if everyone can see what happened beneath your clothes. You pass a shop window and catch your reflection. Paler, thinner, older somehow. The operation lasted minutes. The fever lasted days. But the memory, it lingers. At night, you wake suddenly, heart racing, certain that hands are holding you down. You reach instinctively for your abdomen. The scar is there, raised, solid. You breathe until the panic subsides. Victorian patients rarely spoke of trauma. There was no language for it, no diagnosis, no term like post-surgical stress. They called it weakness, nervousness, melancholy. But you know the difference. You flinch at sudden noises now. When someone grips your arm unexpectedly, your body reacts before your mind does. You feel again the leather straps, the cloth between your teeth, the surgeon's calm voice. You wonder how many others carry the same invisible weight. How many walk through London with hidden scars beneath waistcoats and dresses? How many survived the blade, but not unchanged? Surgery in the 19th century was advancing rapidly. Public demonstrations filled operating theaters. Speed was admired. Precision celebrated. But the patient's experience was rarely recorded. Their fear, their shock, their memory of pain. Those details faded into the background of medical progress. You continue walking. Your steps are steadier now. The scar aches in cold weather, a dull reminder. You learn to move differently, to protect the wound without thinking, to sit carefully, to rise slowly. Weeks pass. Your strength returns gradually. The fever does not return. The wound closes fully, but the scar remains firm beneath your fingers. One afternoon, you pass by the hospital again. You did not intend to. Your feet simply brought you there. You stop across the street. The windows look harmless in daylight. Students move in and out. You see a young man entering quickly, pale and supported by two others. Your chest tightens. You know what waits inside. You know the smell. You know the silence before the cut. For a moment, you consider crossing the street, entering again, not as patient, as witness, but you remain where you are because survival gives you distance, not immunity. You turn away. The city feels larger now, more fragile. You understand something deeply. Victorian medicine was not cruelty, it was limitation. They did what they could, with what they knew, and sometimes that was enough. You survived an era where survival was uncertain, where anesthesia was not guaranteed, where infection was invisible, where speed replaced comfort. You carry the proof in your body, in the quiet ache, in the memory that visits without warning. London moves around you. Steam rises from sewer grates. Church bells ring in the distance. Somewhere, in a theater beneath a skylight, another operation begins. Another patient stares at dust floating in pale light. Another body trembles under leather straps. You walk forward, alive, changed, aware. And you understand something few ever fully grasp. Progress is built on pain, and you were part of it. The turning of the knife. You do not return to the hospital, but the hospital does not leave you. Weeks pass. Strength returns in uneven waves. Some mornings you wake almost steady. Other mornings the scar pulls tight and the memory presses closer than the pain ever did. London continues its noise, but medicine is changing, quietly, almost invisibly, beneath its cobbled streets. In 1867, just a few years before your operation, a Scottish surgeon named Joseph Lister began speaking about something most doctors could not see. He spoke of invisible agents, microscopic life, organisms that caused decay. He suggested that wounds did not rot because of bad air, but because something entered them, something living. Many surgeons resisted him. The idea felt abstract. The smell in the theater had always been accepted as part of the work. The blood on coats, a mark of experience. Cleanliness was about appearance, not sterility. You remember the theater, the reused instruments, the hands wiped on cloth, the layers of dried history on fabric. You remember the ward, the sweet, heavy smell that followed the first operation. You survived infection. Many did not. Lister began spraying carbolic acid in operating rooms. He washed instruments in it, washed hands in it, cleaned wounds with it. He was mocked at first. Some called it unnecessary. Others called it impractical. But slowly, outcomes began to shift. Infection rates dropped. Mortality decreased. The theater began to change. You think about that often, how close you were to a different era, how thin the line was between survival and timing. If your operation had occurred 10 years earlier, your chances would have been worse. If it had occurred 10 years later, perhaps the fever would never have risen. Medicine evolves in increments, but patients experience it in absolutes. Alive or not. You run your fingers across your scar again. You imagine a different theater, one where instruments shine, where hands are scrubbed, where coats are clean, where the smell is lighter. You wonder if the surgeon who cut you ever adopted Lister's methods, if he ever stood in that same theater and sprayed antiseptic mist into the air, if he ever thought of the patients who survived before he understood why. You pass a newspaper stand one afternoon. A headline mentions surgical advancements, reduced mortality, improved outcomes. The language is optimistic. Progress, breakthrough, innovation. You stand there longer than necessary, reading words that describe something you endured. You were not a breakthrough. You were risk. You were probability. You were an example of the old world surviving long enough to see the new one approach. Victorian medicine straddled two realities: bravery and ignorance, speed and uncertainty, compassion and limitation. The surgeons who held the knife were not villains. They were working with what they knew. But knowledge was incomplete, and patience paid the cost of that incompleteness. At night, when the city quiets, you sometimes imagine the theater as it will be decades from now. Bright, clean, calm, anesthetized, the patient asleep. No screaming, no leather straps, no cloth between teeth. It feels almost unreal. You lived in the moment just before that shift became normal, just before surgery transformed from endurance into procedure. You survived the edge of progress. And that realization settles in you differently than fear ever did. You were not merely unlucky to be born in that era. You were born at the hinge of it. The knife that cut you was old. The ideas that followed it were new. And you stand somewhere in between. The scar no longer burns the way it did, but it has become something else. A line dividing two worlds. Before the cut, after the cut. Before antiseptic certainty, after scientific understanding. The city grows louder again as evening approaches. Gas lamps flicker to life. Carriages roll past. You walk steadily now, not as strong as before. Not untouched, but standing. Alive in a time that is shifting. And you realize something quietly. The true horror of the 19th century operating room was not cruelty. It was uncertainty. And you survived uncertainty. The weight of survival. Months pass. The scar fades from red to pale, but it never disappears. It tightens when you bend. It pulls when you twist. In cold weather, it aches with a memory that feels almost deliberate. You learn to live around it. You learn to move differently. You rise from chairs carefully. You avoid lifting too quickly. You instinctively protect your abdomen when walking through crowds. Your body has memorized danger. Victorian London is not gentle. Factories roar. Dockyards strain. Construction never pauses. Men fall. Limbs are crushed. Bones break. And surgery remains the last resort. You overhear conversations in taverns. A man whose brother lost an arm. Another who died after a simple procedure. The words are always similar. He didn't wake. The fever took him. The wound turned. No one speaks of microbes. They speak of fate. You begin to understand how common it was, how ordinary. In the mid to late 19th century, surgical mortality could reach terrifying levels depending on the procedure. Amputations, abdominal operations, bone infections, each carried real, measurable risk. Not theoretical risk, visible. You sometimes walk past the hospital without realizing it. Your feet remember the route. You pause across the street again. A stretcher enters the doors. A woman this time. Pale, barely conscious. Her husband walks beside her, jaw tight. You recognize that look. Fear hidden behind composure. You wonder if she will survive. You wonder if she will wake in a ward that smells too sweet. You turn away. Because survival has changed the way you see others. You do not envy those entering. You do not pity them. You understand them. You carry something invisible now, not just trauma, perspective. You understand how thin the thread is. You remember the moment before the first cut, the silence, the dust in the skylight, the surgeon's steady hands. You remember the moment before the second cut, the quiet calculation, the decision made above your body. You realize something unsettling. At no point did you truly control your fate. Not on the table, not in the fever ward. Your survival depended on timing, on technique, on the strength of your own immune system, on chance. Victorian patients often signed no formal consent. They agreed verbally, or simply nodded. The understanding was simple. Without surgery, death was likely. With surgery, death was possible. That was the equation. You accepted it, and you endured. But endurance does not erase memory. At night, you sometimes wake with your jaw clenched so tightly it aches. You sometimes press your palm against your abdomen without realizing it. You sometimes smell metal in rooms where none exists. The body stores experience in ways the mind cannot fully articulate. You meet a man one evening who boasts of modern medicine. "Things are improving," he says confidently. "Soon operations will be routine." You nod, but you know routine is built on bodies like yours, on patients who survived the era before certainty, on those who did not survive long enough to see it. Your scar itches faintly. You scratch lightly. The skin there is less sensitive, numb in places, hypersensitive in others. The nerve endings did not reconnect cleanly. Healing in the 19th century was imperfect, functional, not refined. You think about the theater again, but this time differently, not as a place of horror, as a place of transition. It was brutal, yes, but it was also progress in motion. Every incision taught something. Every infection revealed something. Every survival, yours included, informed the next attempt. Medicine did not leap forward. It crawled, on wounded knees, through blood and fever. And you were one of the stepping stones. You sit quietly one evening near the Thames. The river moves steadily, unconcerned. Ships pass. Workers shout in the distance. The world feels vast again. You breathe in deeply. The air smells of water and coal, not metal, not rot, not antiseptic, just London. You survived the operating room. You survived the fever. You survived the second cut. But survival has weight. It reshapes you. It slows you. It makes you aware of fragility in a way comfort never could. You are not heroic. You are not exceptional. You are fortunate. And in Victorian London, fortune was rare. The ones who did not leave. There is something you begin to notice over time. The city remembers survival, but it rarely remembers the ones who did not survive. You walk past a churchyard one afternoon. Small stones lean at uneven angles, names half erased by weather, dates carved close together. Born, died, sometimes separated by decades, sometimes by months, sometimes by days. Victorian records show surgical mortality declining slowly through the century. But still, for many procedures, survival was uncertain, especially abdominal operations, especially before antiseptic practices became widespread. Statistics existed, but statistics do not sit at tables. They do not hold hands. They do not wake from fever. You remember the older man in the ward, the boy with the bandaged leg, the empty beds. They were not percentages. They were breath. You wonder what became of their families. Did they wait outside the hospital doors? Did they watch the windows for movement? Did someone walk out to deliver the news calmly? He did not survive. You survived. That sentence separates you from them. It also binds you to them, because survival in that era was not proof of strength. It was proof of chance. You begin to understand something heavier than fear. Your scar is not only yours. It is evidence of the threshold you crossed, a threshold others did not. You return to work slowly. People treat you carefully at first, then normally. Time has a way of smoothing the extraordinary into the ordinary. But you carry it differently. When someone jokes about minor injury, you do not laugh as quickly. When someone boasts of bravery, you remain quiet. You know what courage actually feels like. It feels like nodding when you want to run. It feels like opening your mouth to scream and enduring instead. Victorian society admired surgeons, celebrated innovation, but patients rarely wrote memoirs. They rarely documented what it felt like to be conscious under steel. Their voices dissolved into medical journals as case studies. Male, 32. Abdominal incision, complicated by infection, reopened, recovered. Recovered. One word. It does not capture the night sweats, the delirium, the fear of the second cut. It does not describe the weight of leather straps against your wrists. You stand one evening outside a lecture hall where a young surgeon speaks about antiseptic success rates. The crowd applauds. He describes reduced infection, improved healing, shorter recovery times. You feel something unexpected. Not resentment, not pride. Recognition. Progress is visible now. Cleaner instruments, more careful preparation, less casual indifference to contamination. You imagine a future patient lying on a similar table, but asleep, unaware of the blade, unaware of the scraping, unaware of the theater watching. It feels almost merciful. But you know mercy was once measured in speed. Now it is measured in prevention. You leave before the lecture ends. The night air is cool. Your scar tightens slightly in the cold. You press your palm against it. It grounds you. You understand something clearly now. You are not defined by the surgery. You are defined by having lived through it. There is a difference. The ones who did not leave the ward do not walk beside you, but they shape the era just as deeply. Their losses accelerated change. Their infections taught lessons. Their absence influenced practice. You carry the visible mark. They carried the invisible cost. And as you move through London's crowded streets, you realize something that would have seemed impossible on the operating table. You are not only a survivor. You are part of the turning, part of the slow, painful evolution of medicine. And that realization steadies you more than any bandage ever could. Under the skylight. Imagine the room again. The wooden table, the pale rectangle of light above, dust drifting in slow circles beneath the skylight, the surgeons in dark coats, the tray of instruments. No anesthesia, no certainty. You are lying there again, not because the operation failed, not because the fever returned, but because memory does not disappear. it settles. The operating room of the 19th century was not designed for comfort. It was designed for speed. Speed to outrun blood loss. Speed to outrun shock. Speed to outrun what no one yet fully understood. In that era, surgery was an act of endurance, for both the surgeon and the patient. You survived it, but survival was never guaranteed. If your body had been weaker, if the infection had spread faster, if the second cut had come too late, your name might have been carved into stone instead of carried forward. Victorian medicine stood on a threshold, before antiseptic certainty, before reliable anesthesia, before the quiet hum of modern operating rooms. You lived at that threshold. You felt the blade. You felt the fever. You felt the waiting. And you walked back out into the London streets carrying a scar that marked the edge of an era. Progress is often remembered as triumph, but it is built on uncertainty, on risk, on people who lay beneath skylights and endured what could not yet be softened. If you walk through a modern hospital today, the silence feels different. Patients sleep. Monitors beep gently. Instruments shine. Hands are scrubbed. The air smells clean. That calm did not appear suddenly. It was earned slowly, through decades of trial, through mistakes, through loss, through survival. The 19th century operating room was not a horror story written for shock. It was reality. It was medicine in transition. It was a place where pain was endured openly, and where progress began to take shape in the shadows. You survived that room. But the question remains: if you had lived in 1874, would you have survived it too? Would your body have held? Would your fever have broken? Would you have endured the second cut? History is not distant. It is intimate. It is fragile. It is written in scars. And sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that changed the world the most. If you've made it to the end of this journey, you've just experienced one of the most uncertain chapters of medical history, from the inside. And if you want to step into more real stories like this, to wake up in another century, to feel the air, the danger, the survival, consider subscribing. Because this is not a horror story. This is history. And next time, the table may be waiting in a different room.